dark by Ruskin Bond. And we have already seen the introduction and the first 4 paragraphs of the story. There we had seen the teacher, Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher. He was returning from Shimla city. Then he suddenly noticed a boy, and the boys were not out, supposed to be out after getting dark, but the boy was sitting there in the pine forest on a rock. So Mr. Oliver, as a responsible teacher, he was just surprised and curious to know why the boy was sitting there, and he found the boy was crying there. And now we will see the rest of the story. You may please take page number 75, first paragraph. Well, what is the matter? He asked, his anger giving way to concern. In the last paragraph, the 4th paragraph, we had seen that Mr. Oliver asked one question. What are you doing out here, boy? But the boy didn't reply to that question, but he was crying. Now again, Mr. Oliver, he is asking question. Well, what is the matter? Why are you here? And why you are crying here? Why are you crying? He asked, his anger giving way to concern. First, when he found the boy there on the rock, then Mr. Oliver, as a responsible teacher, he was very angry. Why the boys were not supposed to be out after dark, but the boy was there, so he was very much angry. But now, after seeing the boy was crying, this anger, it gave way to concern. He was very much concerned about the boy, and he wanted to know why the boy was crying. What are you crying for? What is the reason for you are weeping, and why you are crying? The boy would not answer or look up. For that question also, the boy didn't answer. The first question he did not answer. Then again, Mr. Oliver, he asked the questions. Then also the boy didn't answer. Then third time also, Mr. Oliver is asking, what are you crying for? Then also the boy is not answering, and at the same time, he even didn't look up. His body continued to be racked with a silent sobbing. That means he was just crying, and the body was shivering with a silent sobbing. Sobbing means weeping. Come on, boy, you shouldn't be out here at this hour. Tell me the trouble. Look up. So after seeing that one, the teacher, Mr. Oliver, he was very much concerned, and he said to the boy, come on, boy, don't worry. You are not supposed to be outside after getting dark. Tell me the trouble. That means tell your problem. And you may please look up. So the boy looked up. Now we can notice that the boy responded. Till that, boy didn't respond to Mr. Oliver. But when Mr. Oliver asked the boy to look up and tell the trouble, then the boy looked up. He took his hands from his face and looked up to his teacher. So the boy just removed and took away his hands from his face, and he looked at his teacher. The light from Mr. Oliver's torch fell on the boy's face. So the light of the torch that fell upon the boy when he looked up towards his teacher. And you just notice the next sentence. If you could call it a face. So some speciality is there with that face. That we will see in the next paragraph. It had no eyes, ears, nose or mouth. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. I hope that you understood the feature of the face. The face without eyes, ears, nose or mouth. Then how can we call that face as a face? Because we know the features of the face. And if that features are there, then only we can call that as a face. But here, no features. That is why earlier, the last sentence of the 5th paragraph, if you could call it a face. Why? Because there were no features of a face like eyes, ears, nose or mouth. Then with a school cap on top of it. And that is where the story should end. But for Mr. Oliver, it did not end here. So after that is the point where the story is supposed to be end. Why? Because normally if you see such a kind of situation, if you face such a kind of situation, you will collapse there on the spot itself and the end of the story. But here Mr. Oliver did not stop here. The torch fell from his trembling hands. That means shivering hands. Trembling hands means shivering hands. He turned and scrambled down the path, running blindly through the trees and calling for help. So the story didn't end for Mr. Oliver. The torch fell down from his hand and he turned and scrambled to move fast. Scrambled means to move fast down the path. So he was just running and he wanted to escape from that place. So he was just running blindly. Why? Because no torch with him and it was very dark. So he was running blindly through the trees and calling for help because he was totally afraid and terrified. He was still running towards the school building when he saw a lantern swinging in the middle of the path. So the torch fell down from his hands and he was running through the forest asking for help. Then he was running towards the school building. Then he found a lantern in the middle of the path. What is lantern? It is a light. And this light was swinging in the middle of the path. And Mr. Oliver stumbled up to the watchman. Stumbled means walking without coordination. That means he was about to fall on the watchman. The watchman was standing there hanging a lantern and he was about to fall onto the watchman. Stumbled up to the watchman. Then gasping for breath, "What is it, Sahib?" asked the watchman. "Has there been an accident? Why are you running?" So he was just trying to breathe and trying to breathe maximum. Then the watchman asked Mr. Oliver that, "What is it, Sahib?" "What is it, sir?" asked the watchman. "Has there been an accident? Any accident there? Why are you running?" So certain questions asked by watchman, and Mr. Oliver, we know he was totally terrified after seeing the face of the boy, and he was running through the forest asking for the help. Then he suddenly found watchman was standing there and he was almost stumbled upon the watchman. Then watchman is asking some questions. Then Mr. Oliver responded to watchman, "I saw something horrible. A boy weeping in the forest and he had no face." No face means no features of a face. So he was very much afraid and he was just describing that horrible incident that he experienced in the pine forest to the watchman. "No face, Sahib." Then watchman also was surprised and asking, "No face? Why?" Because it is not possible at all. Each human being, they have got their face. But here, no face for the boy. So the watchman also was totally surprised and he asked the teacher, Mr. Oliver, that, "No face, Sahib. No eyes, nose, mouth, nothing." Then Mr. Oliver clarified, "It is the boy without no eyes, nose, mouth, nothing." And that is why Mr. Oliver called and said that the boy without a face. Then as a response to that one, what watchman did, "Do you mean it was like this, Sahib?" asked the watchman and raised the lamp to his own face. The watchman had no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. And that is when the wind blew the lamp out. So that is the end of the story. So when Mr. Oliver said to the watchman that the boy was not having a face, then watchman, as a response to that, watchman asked the person, Mr. Oliver, that, "Do you mean that it was just like this?" And he raised the lamp towards his face. Then what Mr. Oliver noticed that watchman also was not having any features. That means no ears, no eyes, no nose, no mouth. So then that moment, that when the wind blew the lamp out. So that is the end of the story. So after that, what happened? We do not know. So even the story ends with a suspense. Alright? surprise. So I hope that you understood the story, A Face in the Dark. This is a supernatural story, and throughout the story we can find out that the strange experience Mr. Oliver had in his life during a walk through the pine forest late night is elaborated in this story. And he met a boy with no face and no features of a face, like nose or the eyes or the mouth. And he went and asked help from the watchman, and there also he noticed that the watchman also having no features of the face. I hope that you understood the story. You may please once again read the story. It is very simple. And in your workbook, you may please write answer to the first two unsolved passages. Thank you. Have a nice day.